You've been around the world. You're a very well-learned polyglot, and you built a fantastic business where you can be anywhere where you want to be.
This video is brought to you by Agent CRM, the ultimate all-in-one software designed for agents and their teams. If you're looking to supercharge your business, Agent CRM has got you covered. From AI-powered schedule bot that helps you fill your calendar effortlessly to comprehensive marketing tools like unlimited funnels, email marketing, and ringless voicemail. Agent CRM is packed with features to streamline operations. With Agent CRM, you get access to powerful automated workflows, preloaded marketing campaigns, and world-class support. Plus, you can start with a free 14-day trial, no sign-up fee, and zero cost to get started. Join over 10,000 satisfied users who have transformed their business with Agent CRM. Head over to the link below or scan the QR code to start your free trial today and take your business to the next level.
Hey everyone, this is Dan Wynn with the Intentional Entrepreneur Podcast. I have a very special guest with me today. He's been a professional jazz musician, English teacher, taught himself 8 languages and built himself an 8-figure business called StoryTelling. I do want to welcome to the show, Olly Richards.
Thank you very much. Although I do have to correct you, StoryLearning, not storytelling, but close enough.
My fault. I do appreciate you correcting. I'm very excited to talk to with you today because, like I previously said, you've been around the world. You're a very well-learned polyglot, and you built a fantastic business where you can be anywhere where you want to be. But before we kind of get all into that, can you share a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel that my various different backgrounds and careers have had a pretty big impact on the business I've ended up building. That's informed a lot of what I do today. So yeah, so I grew up in the UK, and my first career was in jazz. So I went to university. I did a degree in jazz piano in London at one of the music colleges there, and then so that was 4 years, and then came out and I played professionally for many years. I a lot of jazz, but also I had a big thing for Latin American music, so samba and salsa and stuff like that. And then, but the musician life wasn't really for me, and I do a lot of sort of self psychoanalysis on this and try to figure out what went wrong. But for whatever reason, that wasn't something I wanted to continue doing, and so I pivoted, and I decided around the time of the financial crisis around 2008, I decided to pivot and retrain to be an English teacher, because I'd always wanted to, travel and love languages. So I trained as an English teacher, and I went to live in Japan. So I lived in Japan for 4 years, and then I moved to the Middle East, spent some time in Qatar and Egypt, and got pretty highly qualified as an English teacher. Started going down the academic route a little bit. But in the background, I'd always been learning languages, because that was my real the passion that was constant throughout the whole journey. And so towards the end of my English teaching career, I actually started a blog. This was about 2013. I started a blog on languages, and just documenting how I went about learning languages myself. And then this blog was the thing that ended up gaining some traction. At which point, a couple of years in, I then quit, went full time on it, moved back to London, and then went full time on the business. And that was that was about 9 years ago now that I went full time, and then have since then been focused pretty doggedly on growing that to what it is today.
All right, fantastic. And so obviously you've been around the world. You've taught yourself all these amazing languages. What would you say is your most favorite or most memorable place you've taught at, and the language that you've learned?
Yeah, I love that question. So, I mean, the places that I feel like are a real part of my identity would be Brazil and Japan, for very, very different reasons. I mean, Brazil, because like I first started going to Brazil as a 21-year-old, just like having a lot of fun. I met lots of Brazilian friends in London, and they would then invite me to Brazil. So I go to see them in Brazil. I was learning Portuguese, learning to play samba and bossa nova on the guitar. singing songs in Portuguese. So that was like spiritually a big deal for me. But then when I moved to Japan, 10 years later or so, I learned Japanese. Japan's one of those countries that is just, it's like a different world. It's a different world, man. And because I spent time learning the language and spent many years there, I really got inside the culture. And when you get inside a culture of somewhere like Japan, you just feel it's just very, very special because it's just like nothing else. And and I do miss Japan a lot, and it's the place I go back to most often. Actually, whenever we have family holidays or whatever, it's back to
Mhm.
Japan.
Yeah. You talk about singing in Portuguese. I remember back when I was in school, so Spanish was my chosen elective for learning a second language. And I remember the methodology I learned the most was actually singing karaoke in my Spanish
Nice,
class. Yeah, and then
nice.
watching telenovelas. So we got to watch these, these. It was due to our proximity. It was Mexico, not Spanish, dramas, but it is Mexican. It
Yeah,
is very uh very intense. I was, you think, I know we're kind of, we have these soap operas in America where you can watch, and it's all these love triangles and death and murder,
yeah,
and
yeah.
Mexican telenovelas is like,
It's different level, right?
it's like a level 10
Yeah,
to
yeah.
America.
It's great. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's it's totally self indulgent, but it's a great language learning technique because
yeah.
one of the things that people I think misunderstand about languages is that to learn a language you have to memorize lots of words and grammar rules.
Hmm, hmm,
Um, but what's generally accepted um, is that actually that's not the best way to do things because it's very very difficult to actually actively memorize everything
hmm.
everything you
Yeah,
need to learn a
yeah,
language. And
yeah.
so what's best to do instead is to immerse yourself through
Hmm,
reading,
hmm,
through listening, through watching TV. Because if you can do that for years and years and years, your brain will end up soaking it up naturally.
hmm,
And so
hmm.
so yeah, I'm a big fan of your technique.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so let's kind of get into the substance of it, and can you share a little bit about what your company is about?
Yeah, so story learning is so we teach languages through stories, not rules. That's the tagline, which relates to what I just said about the best way to learn languages, right? So we have stories as our main as our USP, really. So we're the only major language provider that I've ever come across who uses stories to teach languages. And so that's our differentiator, and we have an entire ecosystem that's built around the concept of stories with languages. So we have dozens of published books, which are in bookstores around the world. I know you're in Bangkok. If you go to the Kinokuniya in Bangkok, you'll find the books there. And then so we have lots of storybooks. We have uh, digital products, courses, which hundreds of them now in 15 different languages, which again teach. So you can learn Spanish from day one all the way up until advanced level, again with stories, and then we have an entire media ecosystem around that with blog, YouTube, podcasts, things like that to support it. So that's the main structure. We also now have we're pivoting more into some sort of more high touch point one to one training as well. You're pretty typical higher ticket model, and then we have some very very sort of cheap front end stuff as well. So I guess you'd call it a quite typically structured medium sized online education digital product type business.
Mhm, mhm. So you talk about kind of low end, books, things like that, all the way to the high end, one-on-one.
Yeah.
Tell us how important it is to have, the products, having kind of an ecosystem of products, right, of offerings available to different levels of customers, and the progression they kind of go up, right, as they finish one and they finish two and the vision three, and how that builds not only customer loyalty but increases your um, lifetime customer value for your company.
Yeah. It's so this is I used to think that this was the sort of the model I'm about to describe was like the best way of doing things, but having since met many entrepreneurs who have different types of businesses, I'm quite aware that it's one way of doing things, and it's very effective for this specific type of audience. And I think the punchline for all of this is you've got to know your audience and their
Mm,
own learning preferences and buying preferences and consumer habits and stuff like that. So what's really core in a language learner, so our customer, our avatar, is that very few people will actually sit down and dedicate themselves full time to learning a language and become fluent in 6 months or 12 months, which is possible if you really go for it. 99.9% of people will not do that. Instead, they are essentially hobbyists who will be learning and dabbling over a period of many years, 2, 3, 5, 10 years. And so what I've come to understand is that if you accept that is the educational, that's the learning journey that a prospect will go on, then actually it doesn't make sense to come out all guns blazing at the beginning. $10,000 product. I'll teach you, reveal all the secrets and teach you a language in 3 months, because it's just not going to work. It's not. It doesn't fit the expectations or the learning profile of your consumer. So what we do instead is we say, look, if you've tried everything else, if you've tried Duolingo, if you've been to evening classes, and that hasn't worked for you, well, here's something different. With us, you can learn a language through stories. And then, so typically, people will discover us in one of many different ways. So they might buy one of our books, they might find us on YouTube, they might buy a course, whatever it may be. And then they're either going to like it or they're not. And it's not for everybody. But for a large contingent of language learners, like, it is something very different. It's something quite fresh. And so if they like the method and they try it and it works for them, then really the next logical buying pattern for them is to continue to purchase products at different intervals. It might be after a couple of months, 6 months, 6 weeks, whatever. If they buy a book, they might buy the volume 1, volume 2, volume 3. If they are actually taking our main courses, then, like you say, they might progress from level 1 to level 2 to level 3 to level 4 and so on. And that might happen over a couple of years. But it also, so from a basic pattern of consumption from someone who likes us, it's very conducive to that. It's quite different to the value ladder model you hear talked about so much, where that the whole aim of making a sale is to ascend someone to a higher level of purchase. It's not that. That doesn't work in a lot of education models, because education most of the time is not about secrets. In the marketing and business world, there is such a thing as a secret that I could tell you that could grow your business overnight. That exists, but in most educational contexts, it's much more about hard work on the part of
mm,
the student, right? So you can't secret your way through that. So it's much more about being there and supporting them over the lifetime. And so what we very deliberately do then, just to wrap up, is to make it so that everything we do, whether it's an email that we send out or a book that we write or a course that we publish, it doubles down on creating this world of learning a language through stories, so that people who follow us over a period of years are able to keep buying and keep learning at a pace
mhm.
that's right for them.
Yeah, yeah. You talked a little bit about, you mentioned the word avatar. How critical is it for your business to accurately identify that so you can craft your marketing messages accordingly?
I mean, it's critical for any business. I suppose, unless you're selling, I don't know. I was going to say, like, AirPod cases or something like that. But even then, you need to know who your avatar is, right? They're typically going to
Hmm.
be slightly, higher income, um, probably own other Mac products. So yeah, it's we are very very clear on who our avatar is, and it gets quite in the weeds with language speak, but essentially in our case, that we're targeting someone who's slightly older, typically somewhere between 40 to 60, 40 to 70, who has tried for many years to learn a language and hasn't succeeded, and is looking for something new that meets their learning preferences. And that's we have this written down, plastered around our various different company uh, shared docs and stuff like that, and we make everything that we do for that very specific person. We didn't know that at the beginning. I mean, when I first started my blog, I had no idea what I was doing. I was just writing what I was writing for myself, essentially. But this is the benefit of, I think, being in business for quite a long time. You start to develop this institutional knowledge of of who your avatar is, and also almost by like in an automated way, you start to write for your avatar because you just get to know them over a number of years. But it becomes more complicated when your team grows and you bring in outside marketers and copywriters and stuff, because then you have to formalize the avatar a bit more carefully. But yeah, I mean, everything we do revolves around a deep understanding of the avatar.
How did you come up with this particular niche of teaching methodology using stories versus some of the more traditional ways of having someone learn a language?
I love that question. So there's two parts to this. One is that it's so I mean, in the first instance, it came from me. It's autobiographical in many ways. So I
Mhm,
actually, I have a story of when I got my first breakthrough learning Spanish 20 years ago. I was stuck on the top of a mountain in Argentina, up on the border with Bolivia, an amazing place called Irusha, thousands of meters up, beautiful Andean town up in the mountains, and I had actually woke up in the middle of the night and I couldn't breathe because of the altitude.
mhm,
And I was really scared, so I couldn't go back to sleep. So I picked up a book in Spanish and I started reading it, and it was way too difficult for me. But what I found was the next day I remembered a lot of the words from the
mm,
book. And I thought, oh, that's
mm,
interesting. Normally, it's really hard for me to remember vocabulary, but this time it's sticking in my brain. And I realized, because of the story, because of the reading. So then I started to use that methodology a lot more, reading and stories for my own language learning. It worked.
mhm,
So then many years later, when it came to start my business, I realized, damn, like this is a real USP right here. So let's try this out. So then I tried a bunch of things, as you do when you're starting a new business. And one of the things I tried was self-publishing on Amazon. So I was
mhm,
writing Kindle books and self-published paperback, print-on-demand paperback books,
mhm,
and audiobooks for that matter, with stories to learn, Spanish, French, German, Italian, and they
mhm,
went like they were so popular. They sold like crazy, and it was very clear to me that this idea of learning through stories was a smash hit in the marketplace.
mm,
So I had that validation from an external marketplace,
mhm,
being Amazon, KDP, and so I think the reason it worked was firstly it came from experience. So
mhm,
it was solid. It was completely legitimate, but also it really struck a nerve in the marketplace. So
mm,
when I saw that happen, I was like, right, I know what I got to do now. And then I spent the following 3, 4, 5 years really slowly reorientating the business towards
mm,
the concept of stories. But it wasn't until 6 years in actually that I finally rebranded from what it used to be to StoryLearning, and did a 301 redirect on the domain,
mm,
rebranded, it changed all that stuff. It took me 6 years to get there.
mhm.
Um, but yeah, that's where it came from.
Wow, that's quite a journey, and you had been a kind of a traditional, as you were, um, language education company, and you went from there and you pivoted to using this particular methodology over a span of 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't. But previously it wasn't. I wouldn't say it was a traditional language education company. It was just a blog where I was selling
Oh, okay.
little training courses on my personal
Mhm,
brand. Basically,
mhm,
that's what it was.
mhm. Yeah.
But when I saw that that methodology had traction in the marketplace,
Mhm.
what
Yeah.
that was it enabled me to off ramp from my personal brand into an actual
Mhm,
business that could
mhm,
be supported by a team,
mhm,
because the whole issue with personal brand businesses is that if you're not available, then the business stops.
mhm,
Um,
mhm, mhm,
but then it can be difficult, especially for creators or educators who have
mhm,
built their business off their personal brand. It can be very difficult
mhm,
to get away from that. And so
mhm,
I think what the insight that I had that was good at the time, among many insights that were terrible, but the one good one that I had was, hey, this story learning thing, if I can codify the methodology,
mhm,
if I can make it into something that's codified and defined, that's going to
mhm,
enable other people to deliver it. And so when I
mhm,
started making these courses in we have courses in 15 different languages now. I don't speak all of those 15 different languages, uh, but I have external tutors come in to deliver for me, which they're able to do because there's the methodology in place. So it was a really big deal because it allowed me to step back from the business and to get to the point where I only spend a few days a month working on the business because the methodology is defined and delivered by
Hmm.
other people.
Yeah, yeah. So let's kind of get into that particular topic too. You've built this great company. I believe it's fully remote or near fully remote, and as a true business owner, it doesn't rely on you working in the business every day. So obviously, part of it was the methodology, but can you share a little bit about what it takes for the founder to actually step away and have not business not actually rely on the founder on a day-to-day
Yeah,
basis.
absolutely. It was. I mean, it was a very deliberate process actually, because I was finding when I was like 5 or 6 years in, I mean, I was burning out left, right, and center. I
Hmm.
mean, I was just doing so much
Hmm.
stuff.
Hmm.
Um, there were times when I would wake up in the morning and the only thing I could do was lie on the sofa, and I couldn't even bring myself to check my email. I think we've all been
Hmm.
there, right?
Yeah.
Um, and and so the first major insight was that structural one of understanding, hey, if we can have a method or a system, then other people can deliver it. And so what I had to do at that point was I had to address my involvement across multiple different areas of the business. So one was on product and delivery,
Hmm.
the other one was marketing,
Hmm.
and the third was finance. I mean, these are the three pillars of any business: right? Finance, operations, and marketing. And so I actually began with the finance side because there was a time when I was doing all the invoicing, all the bookkeeping. I never did bookkeeping myself, but I would, every time a bookkeeper had queries, it was me that was going in to,
Hmm.
dig out the old invoices, and taking me hours and hours and hours a week. And so I actually began by hiring a finance assistant to take over that element of it and building processes for invoices and approval and all that stuff. And that came from a real place of pain because I wasn't in control of my finances. I didn't know what was coming in and going out.
Hmm.
Like any business who often if you do have some success or some traction, your processes do not keep up with the pace of your growth, right? So I recognized that with the help of a coach who I had at the time, who was very, very useful. And so I started to put finance processes in place, which because I could see that we were about to get a lot busier, because I'd landed on this methodology. I knew other people could deliver it, so I got that in place. And then on the product side, it was fairly it was sort of simple but not easy. So the simple part of it was that I just I made my first full course, my first full language program, which was for learning, was like a beginner program to learn Spanish. If you're a Spanish beginner, so I've made that, and then I thought I want to make this in 10 other languages. So what I had to do at that point was to just document the entire methodology. Like, here's how we teach, here's why it's important, here's what to focus on. Document everything, and then start the process of hiring and recruiting other tutors who understood what we were doing
Hmm.
and who could deliver it themselves. So I was, very involved in finding those tutors, and eventually I then handed it off to my head of product, who got to a point
Hmm.
where she could then recruit new teachers herself. And then on the marketing side, this is a lot more. Actually, I think it's a lot more difficult because I was at the beginning, I was blogging myself, I was podcasting myself, I was doing YouTube myself. And so the blog writing is fairly easy because you can just get writers to create stuff. For the YouTube thing, so I still actually do my YouTube channel to this day because I really enjoy it, but it only takes me about 30 minutes a week to do that, and we have a channel with about 500,000 subscribers. It's a fairly good size. I very deliberately built a production team around
Mm.
YouTube. So whereas before it was me coming up with the idea, uh, scripting, recording, editing, all of that. Well, the way that we do it now is that I have a YouTube producer,
Hmm.
and a script writer, and then a team of editors. So what happens is they take care of the whole ideation scripting process. A
Mhm.
video lands on my desk on Monday morning. I just turn on my camera, read the script, and then it's done. So
Mm.
it's super easy for me. There would be a next step where I would bring on a few other people to be the face of the brand.
Mhm.
That's 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 one of those things that would be important if I wanted to exit completely
Mhm. Mhm.
from the business, but we're not really there. It's not a huge priority for me,
Mhm. Mhm.
and in the meantime, it's to my benefit to still have a presence, for my face to still be around the business. So I keep doing that. But essentially, with all of those things that I've outlined, with the finance stuff, with the product stuff, with the marketing, the process that I've always found works for me, and I write a lot about this on my newsletter, is to firstly you've got to do. I feel like for a growing business like mine, you've got to do everything yourself at the beginning and figure out how it works. And once you know how something is done, then you document it and you hand it off. So it's a continual process of learning how something needs to be done, figuring out the best way to do it yourself, potentially with the help of consultants and things like that, but figuring out the process for yourself, documenting it, and then bringing in someone else to actually execute on that. And uh, the 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 thing that's made that very easy for me to do, or the thing that's really helped that process, is that I've always hired from within my audience. So
Mm.
obviously in a startup environment, especially if you're building tech, you need tons of outside people from the beginning. You need developers, you need um, probably marketing support, stuff like that. But in a case where the business is growing from scratch, bootstrapped, very very methodical growth, like mine has always been, the benefit of figuring stuff out yourself first and then resourcing it from the outside is that you can hire from within your audience. You don't need them to be a player industry experts. What you need them to be able to do is to actually have the enthusiasm to learn from you and learn to execute on the stuff you've done. And then these people also, not only do they tend to be not quite as expensive, you're not paying top tier wages, but also they tend to be quite loyal and stick around for a long time. So we've had very very low turnover over the years, and the whole business is staffed by people who really love what we're doing. So again, it's not going to work for everybody, but in this kind of situation where you're building an audience focused business, uh, that can be run from anywhere, then it's worked out really well.
Yeah. You talk about YouTube, and one of my kind of secret indulgences is just watching these shorts where they're polyglots like yourself, and they'll come in and they'll interact with native speakers, but they'll first come
Yeah,
in and speak usually English or not the native language, or how much is this a thing, and then the
shock
native
them.
speaker was kind of gossip, yeah, or gossip, and they'll start
Yeah,
speaking like Shellman NYC, right? He's the most popular one. That's one of the things I like watching, because it's so languages seem like food, in the sense that it brings strangers together and seek a common ground, and they're just kind of almost instantly friends.
I mean it is that's exactly what languages are, and I think that the reason that stuff is quite popular is because it it just it does speak to that real human connection, and the stuff that goes viral, stuff that stuff that goes viral is always things that people can relate to on a deep level. And there's something about watching two people on the street who don't have this seemingly have no common ground, and then you realize, wow, I can communicate with this person who looks nothing like me in their language. Like, what's going on? It touches a nerve on a very deep level. And Shalmar is actually a business partner of mine in a couple of different things. He's the absolute. I mean, he started that. He's the goat of this stuff. And everything you see now on YouTube is because he pioneered that. And yeah, I love that stuff as well. It's not something that so it's interesting because I know I've always known if I wanted to explode my YouTube, then I should also make videos like that, going out onto the street and doing the. But I very deliberately have not done that because it's important for me to build a business that can run without me. So
Sure.
one of the things that I've always done quite proactively is make quite deliberate choices over the types of content that we produce as a business, because I know that it has to be conducive to being run by a team, and not relying on me as founder to be the, you know, the sole creative fountain.
Hmm. What would you say are the differences in going from six figures to seven figures, and then also seven figures to eight figures?
It's actually quite striking how similar this is across different businesses. So, I mean, one of the things I do often at the moment now is I mentor entrepreneurs who are on that same journey, and typically they're mid to high six figures who want to scale to seven figures, and I see time and time again the exact same struggles. So the pathway, if you start kind of low six figures, someone who's doing, you know, 100 200K in annual revenue, typically at this point it's a business that has found some traction. So they've managed to find an audience, or they've managed to find a source of leads somehow, and then they found a product that people are buying. And at this point, you've made you've found some product market fit. You're making some money. You've probably quit your job, but you're doing absolutely everything yourself, and it's kind of tough. So then the pathway, the ideal pathway from, say, 200K to a million in revenue, is just to do a lot more of the stuff that
Mm,
you're already doing. So,
mm,
you know, if you're getting your traffic from Twitter, then it's like, so let's say that you have a simple business where you're getting your traffic from Twitter and you're selling a digital product. Then, all right, how do we get a lot more traffic from Twitter and sell a lot more digital products? It's pretty straightforward, really. But what people end up doing, rather than keeping it simple and just doubling down on the things that they're doing, is that they tend to add in a bunch more stuff. So they'll start doing LinkedIn, and they start a YouTube channel or a podcast, and then they'll start making these different kinds of products, and they'll think, oh, maybe I should write a book. And so almost always, I find myself I find myself having to help people detangle this web of unnecessary stuff that they've made, and going back to basics. And because if you've already figured out how to grow a Twitter audience, for example, then really the easiest thing to do is just grow that faster. Like, that's the thing you're already skilled at. Like, you don't need to be adding a bunch more stuff. And so in order to get to seven figures in revenue, typically you can do that with one traffic source and one product, or simple suite of products. So if you get a big Twitter following and a suite of, say, 3 training products that are all within one kind of niche, that is pretty straightforward to get to seven figures in revenue. The reason people won't do it or fail to do it is because they get distracted with a bunch of stuff,
mm,
and so their time just gets the better of them. But what you've also got to do at that level is build a team around the production of that, and this is also the thing that's very difficult for people if they haven't built a business before. So not only do you need to do more of your traffic and your product, because those are the two fundamental elements, right? Traffic and conversion, like that's the business. Not only do you have to do more of that, but your time is finite, so you have to build a team who can actually execute on that stuff. So essentially, it is doing more of those things that are working, and then building a ideally very lean team who can do as much of that as possible to remove you from certainly from the fulfillment of the product. And then from seven to eight figures is a totally different animal, because at that point, then you've most likely capped out on your organic traffic. You can't keep
mhm,
scaling your Twitter
mhm,
infinitely. You do reach a peak,
mhm,
which means that typically, because actually, if you think about it, if your business isn't at $1 million in annual revenue yet, that seems like a massive goal to get there. It seems like
mhm,
a colossal goal to get there. Now let's imagine you get there. To get to 10 million in revenue, that's 10 times everything you've already done to get to a million in revenue. It's a lot. Like, people don't realize how much of a jump that is. So you can't just keep doing incrementally more, because it'll take you too long to get there. Everything will plateau, and you can't. So you have to change the underlying dynamics, and almost always that involves moving to paid traffic. So then you have to be able to go out and buy traffic from places like Facebook, YouTube, or whatever, like, direct mail, or whatever it may be. But then what happens is when you go out to cold traffic, you find that your business model falls apart because your business model has been designed to convert to warm organic traffic who know, like, and trust you. Right. So if someone's following you on Twitter, they know what you're about. They understand how your vibe. They probably like you. If you pitch a product, they're predisposed to buy from you. Now, as soon as you go out to a cold lead on Facebook, they don't care about you anymore, so they're not buying your thing, and it's probably at the wrong price point for a cold lead as well. So, and this is something we found at StoryLearning. We had to completely redesign our business model from the ground up in order to be match fit for paid traffic, because we just found
Mhm.
that everything that we were doing was great for a warm organic audience, but didn't work for paid traffic. So so at that point, you find that you often have to rebuild your stuff so that it's ready for cold traffic. But then the scale involved from 10xing something that's already at a million means you also need to a much larger management team. So you need C-suite people in place, heads of marketing, heads of operations, heads of finance, and then you have to spend a lot of money on media, and you're almost certainly losing money at the beginning. So, it's a completely new area of risk,
Mhm.
and I think what's really important to understand is that for most people, it's just not for them. Most people do not have the. They might have the desire. They will say, "Yeah, I want to get to 10 million." Sure, everyone says that, but nobody understands what's actually involved in going through that process. And it's very, 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 very difficult because all these different skills, and this is something I struggle with,
Mhm.
all these different skills, is where you figure out what a CEO actually does. It's administering, it's guiding this pathway of building out all these different elements of the business when there is a lot of financial risk happening, and you're spending money like there's no tomorrow. Like it's really tough. And so typically what I found, I learned this first from one of my mentors, and I've subsequently found it to be true, is that there is kind of a sweet spot for most online businesses, which is somewhere in the region of 1 to 3 million in annual revenue, which you can kind of get to with a mostly organic following, maybe some paid, and a good suite of products that doesn't involve that much delivery. It's very rare that you can continue to grow that past 2-3 million in revenue just because everything starts to plateau. So I found that there is this sweet spot. If you can build a relatively lean online organic business up to 2-3 million in revenue, and I have a healthy profit margin, then that is a very good place to be because everything changes on the other side of that.
Mhm.
And an example would be, if you have a business that's doing 2 million in annual revenue at a 50% profit margin, then that is actually exactly the same as a $10 million business with a 10% profit margin. I mean, it's the
Mhm.
same. It's the same EBITDA at the end of the day. Now, okay, the bigger business is probably more sellable, et cetera, et cetera. But still, for most people, in almost every case, you know, uh, in this particular space, like that for me is the goal. Is to build a lean, profitable uh, business somewhere between 1 to 3 million in revenue.
Yeah. You talk at, 6 figures, 7 figures, you talk about scaling, adding more people. I think for a lot of founders, at least at the beginning, they're very, high strung, very hands on. How do you, and this is something that I struggled for a very long time too, but how do you um, get into the mindset or out of the mindset is only I can do this, or I'm the best one at doing this for my company?
Yeah, I mean, everyone struggles with this. For me, all of these kind of big questions fall into the bracket of education. And it's very common to hear people say that you'll always get your biggest ROI from education, and this is why it's true, because you can be a self-aware person, but it's very difficult to be self-aware like across the board on all parts of the spectrum. And certainly for me, I mean, I've always read lots of books, listened to lots of podcasts, and I've always on a meta level been very aware of the importance of delegation and the importance
Hmm.
of being able to let go. I think for creative types, this is extremely difficult because they feel like so much of their personality is tied up in the actual business itself. So if you do start a personal brand and your business starts from that basis, you really do have to actively work at it, because so much of what you put out in every email you send, every video you make, every call that you have, like it is you. That's the hardest situation to be in. But for me, really, it's been a combination of things. I think the first is the awareness of the importance of actually um, awareness of the importance of being able to let go and delegate.
Mhm.
And then from there, it's been um, deliberately building my team so that we have roles in place where that person's only job is to do that thing that I've hired them for. And so that makes it a lot harder for me to meddle, because if I've hired someone, like for example, my director of operations, like, the reason that he exists is in order to take care of things like fulfillment of the product, or building out new things, or executing on marketing campaigns or whatever. So if I've hired someone to do that thing, it's very difficult for me then to start meddling in it. So it's an awareness of the need to delegate. It is building a team deliberately to to take care of those roles that are needed. And then it's also been coaching for me. So I've always had, I mean, I have a rule where I never go for more than 12 months without a coach or a mentor. And, and the reason is because you then proactively catch yourself doing these things, right? So if you are meddling too much, if you're getting too stressed, like, your coach, if they're good, will pick up on that. And I've had some fantastic coaches who have helped me really just see through the BS. Just I
Mhm.
understand my own
Mhm.
my own my own behaviors, and
Yeah.
and help me fix them.
Yeah. Speaking of coaches, how do you know when you've kind of run the course with one particular coach and it's time to move on to either away from them or
Yeah.
to the next one?
So in my experience, after 12 months, you pretty much know any single coach's bag of tricks.
Mm-hmm.
That's been my experience.
Mm-hmm.
I rarely work with someone longer than 12 months,
Mm.
um, just because I find that you just start to get this sense where, like, you kind of know what they're going to say. And
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know so yeah, I mean, I've always found it's 12 months. I don't think there's anything particularly magical about that number. It's just that once you've been around the gauntlet once you've been around the block a few times, you kind of, you start to feel, yeah, there's not much new here. um but yeah, I'm not sure really how to measure that, other than I do believe in the value of change on that front.
Mm. Mm.
And a year in
Mhm.
business is a long time,
Mhm.
very long
Mhm.
time, actually.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah.
if you've got a great coach, then I think there may well be a disincentive to move away from them. You may well think, I don't want to lose them because they're, they're so important to help keep my mindset in check. Um, and I think that's fine, as long as you see the importance. Often you're paying a lot of money for them, though, so there's that. And there's also an issue, I think, where you want to learn from somebody, and then ideally bring that in-house, as it were, yourself, so that you then can start to embody those lessons, grow as an entrepreneur, and not then have to rely on them for your own, to be able to execute. And then there's the opportunity cost of not meeting the next level of coach who can help you continue to grow. So it's a difficult one, but I think, I've always found that 12 months is pretty much
All right,
a
we're here with
relationship
Olly
runs its course.
Richards. Yeah, Olly Richards with StoryLearning, and talking about building a carousel of products and getting and managing your eight-figure business with a large team. Are there some parting thoughts you want to share with our audience about growing your business to eight figures?
Yeah, so a mentor of mine told me a story about how he won a Entrepreneur of the Year award a while back, and he tells me how he got up on stage and basically said, "Look, it's all thanks to my team." And and I think that the longer I've been doing this for, the more I realize that it is all down to other people and and the team that you can build. And so I focus more and more on two things really: is like my own education, learning from other people, stop reinventing the wheel, learn from people that have done it already, and then hire the best possible people to actually execute on that vision. I think as long as you stay focused on that, it's kind of hard to go wrong.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks again so much, Olly. We're going to get to our lightning round, and you just answer the first thing that pops in your head. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right. Who do you look up to?
Um, my wife.
Okay. What is the best business advice you've ever received?
A coach of mine said to me once, um, Ollie, you need a financial controller.
You did mention you're an avid reader. What's your favorite business book?
It's the Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer.
Okay. If you could do one thing over again, what would it be?
Oh, I would um, I would play a sport as a kid and stick to it.
Are you familiar with the term 3 feet from gold?
I, I've never heard it put like that, but I think I know what you're referring to. So try me.
Okay. All right. So just a kind of a brief refresher. It's kind of a parable, I suppose, or metaphor where the prospector, mining gold prospector, hears there's gold in some land, so he buys the land, buys all the equipment, digs, doesn't hit anything, and then so he sells it to the next person, and that person only digs 3 feet and hits a large vein of gold. So my question is, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, how do you know when to pivot in your business or when you might just be 3 feet from gold?
I think there's two answers to this question. The first one is momentum. If for as long as you feel that you have momentum and you can identify it and feel it, then it's worth carrying on. But the other part is to work with a mentor who can shine a light on everything that you're not currently seeing. Because I can guarantee you that whatever you think the opportunity is, or whatever you think the landscape is, there's more that you're not seeing, and you just need that light shone on that on the darkness for you, and everything looks very different.
Mm. What is the biggest challenge in your business today?
Continuing profitable scaling.
Okay. What is something you've spent $100 USD or less on that has greatly improved your business or your personal life?
Oh man, I've kind of rehearsed this question so many times, and then I always forget what the thing is when I actually when I actually get asked it, because there's been a whole bunch of things. Um, I'm gonna say I'm gonna say I've got this big, massive, great water bottle, and it's like a gas can. It's like, I don't know how many liters it is, but it's about twice as big as the one that you can see here. If you imagine it growing out width-wise, I've got a big straw that I stick in the top of it, and I carry it around with me everywhere. Like, it's got this big handle on the side, like a massive pitcher of beer or something. And I'm just consuming so much more water than I ever have, because it's just right there next to me. I don't even have to take the lid off. I just move my mouth over to the straw and sip. It's so simple, but consuming my water intake has been massive, especially because I'm doing a lot of running these days, and I never drink. I'm always drinking coffee, and so yeah, big massive pitcher of water with a straw.
All right. Thank you so much, Ollie, for hanging out with us. I think what you shared with us was it's so inspirational, so educational, and so I think a lot of nuggets came out of it from creating the carousel of products and just trying to get from 6 figures to 7 figures and from 7 figures to 8 figures. So thank you so much for sharing your time with us, and hopefully we can talk again soon.
It's a real pleasure, and really great questions as well. It's nice to have so many thoughtful questions.
All right. Well, talk again soon.
Cheers, Dan.